My apologies to the author. You unlocked one of my hyperfixations with this one. I'll try not to be insufferable, but no promises. Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to another indie book review. And like I mentioned in that cold open, I don't think the author realized that he was giving me a review copy that is based around one of my biggest hobbies. So today, I am reviewing All a Part of the Chaos by Bubba Griggs. This is a contemporary or literary novel all about a professional wrestler who is going through it. His mother has recently passed away before the start of the story. He's having budding feelings for this woman he constantly meets at the grocery store, and his best friend's wife just left him, and he has no idea how to be a good friend in this situation. Our protagonist, Ryder, Thundershock Ryder, is a legacy wrestler who is really good at his persona. Now, this book does use a lot of the wrestling terminology, but it does explain it. But for the sake of this review video, I will also give some vague descriptions and definitions of things. So the act of selling, which is basically acting, and kayfabe, which is basically the fiction of wrestling, are big analogies in this work. It is widely known in wrestling fandom that it's fake, that it's staged, that it's scripted. People will talk about booking. People will get angry at the bookers. It's widely known. I still see some people outside of the fandom that are like, ugh, don't you know it's fake? Yes, literally everybody knows. There are entire podcasts talking about behind the scenes stuff. It's actually become its own, fun part of the hobby to delve into the behind the scenes stuff. So it's a thing. Everyone is aware. But in this book, it's treated as an analogy for Ryder basically not being willing to give up being the life of the party. He likes being the fun guy. He likes being the friend everyone can hang out with, but he doesn't know how to delve down and be deeper and how to go into more emotional things. So when his best friend is going through a divorce, he has no idea what to do with it. The fact that he's estranged from his professional wrestler father, he has no idea how to handle it. And so he goes through the beginnings, I would say, because this is a trilogy, of a redemptive arc and basically realizing that sometimes being the life of the party isn't enough. Now, when I say that this is one of my major hobbies, I don't just mean that I've watched wrestling before. I have. I actually didn't start wrestling until I started dating my husband. But the thing is that I've been running the merch table at a local wrestling promotion for 5 years now. I have seen a ton of behind the scenes stuff at our local promotion. Now, it's smaller, more mom and pop type stuff, but it is attached to the Black and Brave Wrestling Academy, which means that I have had dudes trained by WWE champion Seth Rollins crash on my couch. So I would not consider myself as being in the business, although I have done work both for this promotion and I worked as a commentator for a little bit for another wrestling promotion. I would call myself adjacent because I have gotten a lot more glimpse behind the scenes than the average wrestling fan would, but I'm not going to hold that against the author in any way, shape, or form. A lot of the stuff that I've learned has been purely through experiencing this more behind the scenes area, and it's not exactly something you can just easily Google. So for the little things in the story that didn't feel true to my experience of wrestling, I'm gonna let it slide. And in some cases, I think it pulled back on the realism of real life wrestling for the sake of the story, which is also true to wrestling. You know, it's all about the story. You gotta keep people chasing that next show. But regardless, I really love a redemptive story. It's one of my favorite parts about this. And Ryder is one of my favorite tropes where it is the party character, the life of the party, not actually being the life of the party in their own mind. Like, realizing that there's not enough to them and they have to develop more. His budding relationship with the woman from the grocery store, Amira, is adorable. They did do a very standard thing where part of the reason they get along so well is that she doesn't know who he is. She doesn't watch wrestling, so she's fawning over him like a celebrity. And then he has to teach her wrestling stuff, which also from a story writing standpoint, is also very smart, because as he's teaching her things about wrestling, he's also low-key teaching the reader about it, so that you don't have to be that deep into it. And thankfully, a lot of the terminology is explained pretty well. But I really liked how certain wrestling terms were basically used as an analogy. Like, everyone knows the difference between the reality of wrestling and the fakeness of it. Yes, they are really doing the moves, but doing them in certain ways to make them safer. Everyone knows that the dude getting suplexed is kind of giving a little jump to help the suplex go. Like, everyone knows that. But in this book, it's used as an analogy for a writer putting up walls between him and everyone else. He talks about selling, aka acting, and kayfabe, aka the fiction of wrestling, as things that he pulls up whenever he doesn't want to be real with someone. Whenever another person comes up to him, he doesn't want to be himself, so he pulls up the persona. There was one moment later on in the book where he is a face, a good guy, chatting with a heel, a bad guy, in public. And someone in the area recognizes him, and then they immediately go into character and like, oh, we have to pretend to hate each other. Like, that was a thing before. That was a thing back when the majority of wrestling fans thought it was still, like, real, like, bought into the fiction. But these days, you might get, like, someone commenting, you know, on social media in a snarky way if they catch a heel and a face hanging out outside of the ring. But it's not like a, oh crap moment anymore. Like, it's totally fine to admit that you're friends in real life, even if your characters hate each other. Although I did really like the character of Devastator. He is what you would call in wrestling as a monster heel. Like, not just a bad guy, but like a big, brawny bad guy. And in the book, in the ring, he's, you know, Devastator. But then outside of the ring, he is a giant sweetheart. And that is 100% true to my experience. I don't know what it is. Maybe they just get all of their angst out in the ring. But sometimes, or at least most of the time in my experience, the biggest, awfulest monster heels in the ring are some of the biggest sweethearts outside of it. Like, one of the wrestlers that I've talked with has literally been cast in a low-budget horror film to be a serial killer. He's such a monster heel, but is, like, the biggest sweetheart. Like, gave me a free t-shirt for my mom. Like, it's really cute. So that was true to form. Now, for the more serious aspects of this book, there are a bunch of trigger warnings needed. We have suicide ideation and a suicide attempt. His friend is going through it. You don't see that happen directly. Writer is not... You're not viewing the suicide ideation through the person experiencing it. So it is slightly removed, but there is still that in the book. There is also mentions of domestic violence, and then, of course, death of a family member, with the death of his mother. So be on the lookout for all of that kind of stuff. And there was a lot of good stuff going on, but the biggest issue I had was that it was so much in so little time, which is probably, at this point, one of my most common critiques that I take off stars for in indie books is if you put a lot of themes into a book, your book is going to have to be longer. There are so many things going on in Ryder's life. The relationship with his dad, the ongoing kind of relationship with Amira, his grief over his mom, his struggling to console his best friend, and how there's kind of a reveal with how his best friend and the death of his mother are connected in a way you didn't expect. That brings up all this other drama. But it is in such short time. Like, it's such a small timeline that all of this is being done. And it is such gigantic themes that you really can't do them quickly and not make them feel melodramatic. There's a scene late in the book where shit's going down in a big way, and it feels like melodrama because there was so little time leading up to it. It was so small that it was like, the copy I had was under 100 pages, and granted, the text of this thing was really tiny, really compressed, so I don't know what this would be in a more standard format, but it still felt like way too much that all of this big thing was happening in such a short period of time that made it feel like the melodrama. And maybe that was part of it, because wrestling a lot of the times is melodrama, and you see like matches with Ryder going after, you know, the big title, because of course he's going after the title. My favorite part was one of the scenes where he's in the ring with Devastator, and they're, you know, huge big match, but then they're having a secret conversation as it goes on, which is a lot of fun. I always love that. Once I learned to look for the little things in a wrestling match to see how the wrestlers are essentially creating fiction, improving as they go. It's really cool to see all those moments where, like, oh, they're passing a message to each other about the next move they're gonna do, and to see that represented in the story was really cool, and it was really adorable. I still don't know what a chicklepeck is. I probably should Google that, but it was this really fun moment in the ring. But then later on in the story, it felt like they had dropped the idea of kayfabe versus shoot and was treating the match as real. Like, I'm reading this going, why does this feel like it's supposed to be real? Like, and there were kind of moments like that throughout the book where a heel would cut a promo insulting Ryder, the face, as you do, and Ryder would be like genuinely hurt. I'm like, that's like, no, like, yeah, in some cases, you know, some, you know, wrestlers can take it too far, but for the most part, I was like, that's standard. The bad guy insults the good guy because he wants the people to want to see him beat up. Like, that's the whole point of the thing. And by the end, it was like this, first of all, the idea that going into the match, they don't know who's going to be the winner. This is a title match at, I can't tell if this is supposed to be the fictional promotions version of WrestleMania, but I get the gist that it's supposed to be big. It's called Slampocalypse, which, to be fair, is exactly the name for a pay-per-view that a wrestling promotion would have. But it's supposed to be a big deal. It's supposed to be the big pay-per-view. He's going after the title, and they don't know who's going to win it in the... No. No, I have learned plenty about booking. That's not a thing. There's no way you would not be aware of who's winning the title in the main event on the big show. No. You would know. And again, he treats it very seriously, like he's genuinely getting hurt by all these surprise moves from his opponent, which was also weird because, again, earlier in the same story, they'd played up the fact that both dudes in the ring are in on it. So I'm not sure. I think it was supposed to be for the sake of like the story and making the climactic final match seem bigger. But I don't know. I think there were other ways you could have done it as opposed to such a tonal shift of, yes, wrestling is fake, kayfabe, selling, da-da-da-da, but this match is real. Like, okay. So that was a little bit off. And like I mentioned before, just the sheer tiny runtime for all of these gigantic themes felt squished. Everything felt like it needed way more room to breathe. You needed way more hints and build-ups, especially with Cole, and more about his marriage with Cassie before it failed, to understand that a lot more before the big reveal about things and before that one big dramatic scene. But in general, I did like the ideas that were in here. It is the first in a trilogy, which is great because there are some things left undone in this one. And in general, if you like wrestling, you'll definitely like this one. If you haven't watched a lot of wrestling, you will still be able to understand it for the most part. I think there are a couple words that he didn't necessarily jump fully into, although I do appreciate the commentary on Ring Rat being sexist. Thank you. Was really happy with that one. That is a little bit more of a deep cut for the fandom too. So in general, I gave this book 4 stars. I definitely suggest it if you like more serious contemporary stuff. And in general, I need more people to send me wrestling books so that I can, use and show off more of my fun knowledge. Regardless. If you are an indie author and you are interested in a review like this one, you can contact me. I will have all of that information down in the description below. Please be sure to read through my review policy. It answers a lot of questions and saves us a lot of time. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.